All right, if you can hear me in the back, make some noise. Let's get some energy up. How y'all doing?
Doing better.
Good. I'm Tiff Beatty. I'm here basically to welcome you, not to interrupt. Please keep eating. Make yourselves comfortable. I just want to introduce myself and also the space. And then I will hand it over to the BMRC team and our wonderful presentations today. So in case you didn't catch it, you are at the National Public Housing Museum. So my position at the museum is Associate Director, but much more fun than what that might indicate. I get to actually do a lot of the programs and events. So a lot of public engagement work like this is definitely at the center of what we do, and especially archives, and in particular our oral history archive informs everything we do. So everything from relationship building and community outreach and just understanding communities to help inform our exhibits, to actually archiving the stories and creating that access, as you all will hear a lot more about during the presentations today. So really excited to also learn along with you what our interns have been doing, and also just some of the other work that's been happening over the last couple months. Just a little bit more about the museum, and I'll also maybe shout out some of my coworkers. So you'll hear a lot more from Liu Chen, who's also running our sound. And then I have to shout out our executive director and chief curator, Lisa Lee. I've already heard some comments about, I know this is a history museum, but the aesthetics in here are just fire, right? So got to give credit to Lisa for the design of the museum. Is also an art museum. If you can't tell, there's art everywhere you look. We really believe in not only stories, but arts and culture as a window and as a tool, a bridge between people. And so we believe in the power of arts and culture to really engage people, to inspire people, and to build more connection. And so you'll see that infused through everything we do. We also want people to get creative and to use their imaginations, because that's what's going to be necessary to change all the things that we want to change, right? We have to envision it. We have to work with people who are creative to expand our imaginations and to build the world that we believe in. And so we are not only a history museum, we are also a site of conscience. And so we believe in the power of place and memory to help us solve today's most urgent issues. And obviously for us, a big focus is on housing. We are the only cultural institution in the United States that preserves the histories of public housing. We're also actively engaged in those conversations around housing justice with folks that are doing that community work, and also residents. So this back part of our building is actually housing. So we have 15 units of affordable and public housing right here on the campus. We share a courtyard and a parking lot. So we also think a lot about how our programming and how stories can connect us to our literal neighbors, right? And so that's some of the work that we do, as well as we have a farm that we partner with across the street. There's a library, and so we really are in the business of being a tourist attraction as well as a community anchor, right? So we want to build all of those bridges, and also host events and groups like this. And so this has become also a big part of what we do. We just opened last month, but we've been around since 2007. Just building these connections and obviously raising a lot of money to build this beautiful facility. But we really have a lot of great partners, and some of them have already started to reach out, like you all have, to actually use this space. So that's the last thing I want to just say is if you like this event and this space and you're interested in coming back, not only to see the exhibits, if you didn't get a chance to see those today, or to go on a tour, but also to be able to use our spaces for your own gatherings. And so I'm also the contact person for that, so feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on the website, and there's also some information at the front desk where our colleague Dorian is sitting, who can also sign you up for our mailing list and just give you more information there at the front desk. You can also donate. Always have to plug that, right? We need that money coming in, but we also just appreciate you all being here and just want to welcome you back anytime. So thank you. That's all I have for today. But yeah, I'll see you around, and I'm going to get some food as well. And I'll welcome up Sumaya, everyone. Give it up for Sumaya.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit. I think everyone who generally knows about the BMRC, a few people don't. So we are this consortium of now what will be 28 libraries, archives, and museums as of July 1st, and the National Public Housing Museum joined us last year as a member, and we're very grateful for that, and helped us on this FOCAS grant. But the idea of the BMRC started more than 20 years ago, formally established in 2006, and the idea is that to find collections about African Americans and other African diaspora communities that are spread throughout collections in Chicago and unite them through us and make connections between them and kind of have them live, be used, be accessed, and I guess the cool word now to say is to activate them. And so we do these kind of things too. So this is where we are coming from, and we hope to have you come to more of our programming that we do throughout the year. So this is just some of our members. So this only has 26 people. Like I said, two more organizations are joining as of July 1st. And I can let you know that would be the Haitian American Museum of Chicago. Awesome. Because we're not just African American, but African diaspora as part of the original intent of the BMRC. And also then, I'm gonna get the other one wrong. I'll leave it as a surprise, so I don't want to, that way I don't hurt anybody's feelings if I don't get it right. But you'll see it on July 1st, we'll do a big announcement on our social media, but you can see some of the other institutions that are here, and we have people from these organizations in the room right now. Some of our board members from these organizations are in the room right now, and some of the people who will speak tonight are from these organizations, so very glad to have everyone here. So I wanted to just talk about this grant, what we have here today. The BMRC was invited, I was invited to be a part of this grant that was originally a grant that the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA had for many years to place their students, their master's students in library science to work in community archives in the LA area. And they were funded by the Mellon Foundation. And then when they went to renew it, the Mellon Foundation said, well, let's not just renew it, let's expand it, let's move it outside of LA. What about other parts of the country? And so then we were able to bring this to the BMRC in Chicago, and we are part of, so it's a 3-year grant we have so far, and we have the idea, can you do the next slide? Thank you. So you can see here that there are all of the other information schools. The BMRC is the only one that's not an information school, but we are luckily have these great partners who are from information schools. And so most of everyone you can see is in the US. We have a few Canadian schools, and we work together to place more than 40 interns at public housing's on my mind. No, not at public housing, but at community archives around the United States and in Canada. Different kinds of communities are served by this. The whole idea of this grant, and I do give credit to Dr. Michelle Caswell at UCLA, because she was one of the first people to really, she's the kind of the brain behind this grant. The idea is that we have students of color, people from marginalized identities, who we need their voices and we need them to be present in archives. We need them to be in the room when decisions are made about what has value, what is going to be destroyed, what's going to be kept. But it's very hard to get into those rooms if you don't have experience. Most jobs are asking for 2 to 3 years experience to walk in the door. So she thought of this program as a way to how do we give students who can't afford to work for free, which is most internships are, how can we give them experience to work in an archives, but pay them? And so this was her idea behind this grant, and we're really, so we hope is a pretty much a living wage, and we also give a small stipend to the community archives to help them with any, to help them out. It's not a lot, but it's something we appreciate that they have time that they're taking to manage the student, and we want to help them in any way that we can. Can we see the next one? So just on community archives, because people might not know, well, what exactly does that mean? So sorry, I'm going to put my teacher hat on for a second. And this is actually the Chinese Historical Society of Southern California that I had a chance to visit. So when we were staging for this grant, all of us, we actually met in LA and took a visit to all the community archives that had already hosted interns to see, what did they like, how was that experience, what kind of things did they have them work on. And I was just blown away by the Chinese Historical Society of Southern California. These 2 old houses that they've made into like a museum, the materials that they have, I mean, it was just mind-blowing. They actually served us this amazing lunch, but they had this other storehouse of all these materials, and just the depth of the experiences that they're documenting, and the fact that they have like all of these archaeological pieces, I mean, that the history of the Chinese in California is so deep and extensive. And that's not something that I was ever taught to appreciate in school, right? And the fact that they even had some exhibits about like all the different Chinatowns, because Chinatown had been forced to move so many times, right? Because every time their land became valuable, it's like, uh-oh, guess who has to go? So they actually have done like these projects of like all the different Chinatowns. It was just amazing, and that was a really mind-blowing experience for me. So community archives for me are, and as a term within the field of archives, right, is a place where a community, now that community can be whoever it wants to be, people who have an affinity towards each other. Sometimes it's by what we call race or ethnicity. Sometimes it's about other things that we use to identify ourselves. Sometimes it's a neighborhood. I mean, actually the fact that, one of the most, I remember seeing once public housing in the UK, people who had moved out of the public housing actually decided to do an archive of, their memories, right? Of they no longer had those buildings. But so whatever affinity group that comes together and says, we want to take control of the narrative of who we are. We want to be able to define who we are, and we want to pick the things that would represent us. Because often in mainstream archives, groups don't get to pick the things that represent them. Other things, someone who's generally probably not from that group gets to decide what represents this group. And so a community archivist turns that on its head and says, no, we describe ourselves, we decide what's archival for us, and we give access to the extent that we want to give access to people who are from outside. And so sometimes doesn't go over well for people who believe that everyone should have access to everything, because a community can say, no, we don't want certain people to see our things. And so that's another aspect of it. Yeah, so Michelle Caswell actually, who I said started this grant, is also considered one of the leading scholars on community archives. So she likes to use this term, marginalized identity-based community archives, because she thinks, a lot of communities are documenting themselves, but what we're talking about in this instance and on this grant and what we're trying to support are people whose identities have been marginalized, and who are using the archive as a living thing, so not as something that's helping them in their lives, in their struggles, whether or not those are personal struggles or whether or not those are actual legal struggles. Like whatever ways they might need information that they are collecting in their lives. So she likes to use this term to differentiate from other kinds of ways that a community might document themselves. And so I just wanted to share that. Next one, please. So our partners who've helped make this first year of this grant possible for the BMRC have been Dr. Kim Black Parker, who's here, one of our board members, who's in the audience at Chicago State University. Thank you. Help us to find students, having them apply, and really help me, we had a session where I could actually speak to students. And then also Dr. Maria Bond, who could not be here tonight, from the I School at Urbana-Champaign. They also have an information science school. And Maria was very excited to have her students have a chance at this. So if you could do the next slide. So we have three archives who are on the grant this year: Movin Legacy, the National Public Housing Museum, and Shorefront Legacy Center. And could we go to the next slide? And we have our 4 interns. So from this year, so Cheryl Mohammed, who's here, Blanca Vasquez-Hurley, who's not able to be here, but we will still learn about the work that Blanca was able to do at Shorefront, Alyssa Brown, who is here from Urbana, and Gabrielle Banks. So I will stop there and let the program begin. I think we will start with Shorefront Legacy Center telling us. So the program for tonight is that each archives will tell us, we'll learn a little about what they're doing, and then we'll learn a little about what project their intern worked on this year. And then you eat, and we if there are questions at the end, if there's time, we can maybe answer questions. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Sumaya. They say you can't go home again. I lived here. I lived in this space. My Aunt Mary lived here. So I'm going to say her name because she's not been with us for many years. And I mean, I'm getting a little teary about it, but I almost broke my head and everything else on those animals as a child. But my aunt lived here, Mary Easterhill, and I would stay with her when my mother wasn't well. So I know this space, and it was an important space for me, certainly. So I am Larice Bell. I am the executive director of Shorefront Legacy Center. We are based in Evanston, Illinois. We collect, preserve, and educate through the Black histories of the suburban North Shore. So Evanston, all the way north to Lake Forest, west, and we've been around for 27 years. We were founded by Dino Robinson. Dino is in the photo just to my left here, and those are some of my board members who were just awesome. At Shorefront, we started because our histories were not being shared. It was as though we were invisible, but that's just disenfranchisement. And so Evanston, though we are in the lead, having been the only city to approved reparations for Black folks, it didn't come because it was easy there. It came because there were problems there. So as good as that may be, and it was around housing, it was around redlining, you know, the program has basically been paused, but we wrote the 84-page harm report, which helped to get the passage of the funds for folks. And it's a start. It's not a perfect program. I don't want people to think that reparations only has something to do with finances. It doesn't. Anyhow, going back to this, we talked about this. We're more than an archive. When you're a community archive, you're not just a place that keeps things under lock and key. You share with the community, you build with the community, you speak with the community. There's probably more touching involved than any of you would like to know. But it's true. So next slide, please. This is a program that we did, and we're a living, breathing archive. As I said, I put together a program called the Intergenerational Interview Project. And in that, I had the elders who had received reparations being interviewed by teens. And we put this program together with a couple of Medill professors, and they came and mentored the kids. And for me, it wasn't about the kids being A students or anything. It was typically about kids who hadn't seen an archive, weren't part of journalism, weren't part of history, because there aren't enough Black folks doing this work. And it's important to have them see it, and whether they've imagined themselves in these spaces or not, I imagine them there. So I am in the space where I'm able to make that change and to make that difference. So we had them do an 8-week program, and then they interviewed people who'd received reparations. This is Candy Corbins, who has a hair salon. These are two of our students. That's Rick Tolsky. And we filmed everything, and they interviewed people, and we edited it, and we're going to make a journal. This is our second cohort. Next slide. So the Mellon FOCAS Fellowship, this was an amazing opportunity for us. We love being part of the BMRC. It has been an extraordinary experience for us to learn so much. You see a few people who participated, Blanca, who's not here, who was our FOCAS fellow, Stacy, who is our archivist, Jeremy, me, not the best picture. And we worked together over a number of months to activate the archive. So we had community members come in, high school student, elders, all talk about something they found in the archive that they were able to explore. You'll hear from Stacy a lot more about the project that Blanca worked on, which was an extraordinary project. And I would say that one thing I will mention is, in terms of the project, we worked for months on this. We worked together with Northwestern. It was a partnership. And we learned a lot, you know, in bringing a lot of people into a space where I had always been the only person. I was the first paid employee. Stacy's the second paid employee, along with our interns. And, you know, we learned a lot. When you build, you learn. And we learned some of the things that we did great and some of the things that we didn't. And we did more great, just so you know. Last for me is, last slide. Looking ahead, this also is a photo. We do tours. We have bus tours around Black Evanston, and we speak to people about those. One of the things I'll bring up is, right now we're working on another harm report because a local organization saw it and they said, oh, we like that, we're gonna take it. I came in, I said, well, that's intellectual property. And they said, well, there's no money. And I said, it doesn't have to be that there's money. The idea is that people think you've created something that you haven't, that we've created. And I think that happens a lot in these spaces. And so the important thing for me was to be able to speak up and to talk about it. And they're looking to have some changes made so they acknowledge that Shorefront and that Dino Robinson actually created this bus tour. This was one of the bus tours. And I know they, you know, some of them look happy, but they really loved it. So thank you again for having us. We're thrilled to be a partner with the BMRC. I'm thrilled to be on the board. I don't know how I'm the treasurer, but I'm the treasurer, just so you know. So if anything goes wrong, you can blame me. And I want to introduce Stacy Moss-Paul, who we are lucky, so lucky to have on board with us as our archivist. And I'll let Stacy pick up from here. Thanks.
So like Larisse said, I'm Stacy Moss-Paul. I'm the lead archivist at Shorefront Legacy Center, and Blanca couldn't be here tonight, so I'm going to talk briefly about her project. One of the things that Blanca did, or Larisse did when she first came on board, was to pair her with a community member. And the person that we paired Blanca with was Colette Hill Allen. She was the director of Family Focus, which was this family organization in Evanston, a graduate of Yale University. She's accomplished in all ways, amazing in all ways. And really, because so much of the work that we do is collaborative, it was important for us to pair her with someone who could go into spaces where folks were going to be comfortable talking to her. Because if you know anything about Evanston, if they don't know you, they don't know you. So that was something that was really important, and we're glad that we got Colette involved in that because she knows everybody. Next slide. And so in the work that Colette and Blanca did, and I don't want to just say Colette and Blanca because it was everyone involved. It was, we had Gwen in the house, we had Jeremy, we had Melanie, myself, Larisse, and we were all just sitting around and sharing ideas. But what Blanca and Colette came up with was the class of 1967. And so they started on that project, and they would begin discussing different strategies for what the project was going to look like. And one of the things that Colette talked about was filming video in the high school to record the different hangouts of the people from Evanston past, just to see where it was that they used to hang out, what's there, what's not there, kind of bring the past present. Because she and Colette really felt that having video would be impactful to those stories. And so they met weekly to discuss the project and really flesh out the details of it. And in the conversations, Blanca would ask, you know, what is it that you guys want? And in talking to the group, they were like, we want to have a dance. You want to have a dance? Okay, let's have a dance. So that meant pushing back the project from the winter months into May, but in continuing to talk and have conversations about bringing these people into Shorefront to get them really acclimated into our space. We decided also that we would have community archival workshops, because one of the things that, I'm sorry, I have to read these notes, forgive me. So one of the things that was difficult for people was handing over their materials, because for me, it might be okay if an archivist says, I would like to have, well, I wouldn't give them this. I would like to have your ticket from the Cubs World Series. Might say, okay, that's something meaningful, that's something of value, but for these people, it was really difficult for them. And so we thought bringing them into our space, having them see us, would be really meaningful for them and would get them, you know, excited about not only their dance that was coming up, but also to get them, you know, to know about what we do and to get that word of mouth out. Where are we on this slide? Yes, please. So, like I said, in a community archive space, building relationships and partnerships is really important, and it's really vital because, like I said, you can't go anywhere in Evanston and not know about Shorefront. If you say, oh, I'm from Shorefront, they know exactly who you mean. They say, oh, I know Dino. Oh, I know Larisse. And so it's really great that we have built that relationship with the community and continue to build it. And so making the space so that the community members see it as mutually beneficial. So yes, you are donating your items to us, but you can come here and show your family. You can come. I have found my family in this archive. I found myself in this archive. And so in order to really do that, we decided we also needed to, like I said, we talked about bringing the past to the present, but we also wanted to get young kids, young students involved. And so we tabled at the civics fair in order to get volunteers for this dance that they wanted to have. Some of the kids wanted to make a playlist for it. Other kids were really excited to actually help clean up. I had someone who was really excited to help clean up. So I can't even talk to you about that. Like I said about the weekly meetings. And so another thing that we saw was how triggering the conversations were for the participants. And so we recognized that in doing this memory work, it is a difficult process, really. And preserving these stories were really important. And as Colette and Blanca really worked, as we were sitting around talking about things, our BMGA fellow, Jeremy Rowland, was working, can we go to the next slide? Was working simultaneously to update a finding aid that we have at Shorefront on Julian Jr. Mance. He's a jazz musician. And Blanca and Jeremy worked together to kind of dig deeper into the finding aid instead of just saying, there's a CD in here and this is when the CD was made and all of this. It was also looking at the clothing that was within that collection and the ties. Junior Mance had an extensive amount of ties. And so Jeremy really wanted to dig deep into those ties and not just show the music part of this person, but also the human part of this person. And so he and Blanca worked together. He comes from a music and education background. She comes from an archival perspective. So bringing those two things together to describe archival materials, to arrange them in different ways. They also began to update our North Shore music collection and working with, in addition to Julian Mance, Chris Green and Frankie Donaldson. That's something that they presented at our symposium back last month. And it was just an incredible process to watch them dig deep and get those stories out. Can we go to the next slide? So this first video is of Frankie Donaldson. He is playing the drums in a polo shirt at age 17.
Hi, everybody. We're on Chabelle, Georgia, Houston, Texas. We don't want to sing, but we dance just as good as we want. In Houston, we just started a new dance. It's called the Tighten Up. Now, this is the music that we tighten up with. First, we tighten up on the drum. All right, now, drum. Come on now. Now, tighten it up. Oh, yeah. Tighten up on that drum now. Now, let that bass fall in now. Come on, baby. Oh, yeah. Everybody tighten up now. Oh, come on now. Now, let that guitar fall.
Can you imagine doing that at 17? I know I couldn't have done it. I'm just gonna tell you right now. And so what we saw was that there was a process that really goes into doing this work. Like I said, watching everyone together, gathered at our tables and in our chairs, when you're working together and sharing ideas in a small space, there's like a dance that's taking place. It's like making music essentially. And a lot of the things that you're doing is fitting things together to create this perfect rhythm in order to puncture the spirit of the listener. And if we can go to the...
What did you say?
It's almost like tap dancing. When I
Well,
used to do
yeah.
tap dance.
You know, I have rhythm all over my body.
I got rhythm in my fingers. Next slide. But like Larisse said, even with the best laid plans, everything does not work out the way that you want it to work out. One of the takeaways that we had from the archival workshop that we had, we thought it was a great idea. We want to have an archival workshop. I'm going to focus on genealogy. Blanca's going to focus on photos. Melanie's going to focus on preserving clothing. Jeremy's going to talk about preserving music. Great idea. They were really excited. They brought in their pictures and all that good stuff. Melanie, did her clothing thing. Blanca did music. And then it came time for me to talk about genealogy, and it's like, I'm sorry, I don't really want to talk to you about this really depressing topic because you've had such a great time, sharing these memories and eating food together, really fellowshipping, getting yourselves prepared for this upcoming dance in a few weeks. It was really a downer, but we learned we want to continue to have those kinds of workshops. We just will have them on different days. Instead of having it all one day, we'll break it down so that the things that might be too heavy for you to really go into, we'll have it on another day. At the start of the work that we were doing during that workshop, Blanca wanted them to really center themselves in the moment because the things that they were seeing pictures of their old friends, and some of them have passed away. And so that was bringing up like really triggering feelings and emotions that were difficult to handle, like when you're by yourself, but let alone when you are out in public, out with your friends, out with people you haven't seen in years. And so it was really important to her to have that space to get them centered in the present moment. It gave us a space to talk about the upcoming dance, which, when people are really excited about things, they are really eager to share them. And we were really happy that people were really excited about this, but it kind of took on a life of its own, and we weren't able to fulfill the last part of that plan. But again, if you don't fail, you don't learn. And so even though it didn't work out the way that we wanted it to work out, we learned a lot. And, there are hiccups that come with planning events. Every event that I've had, I really think, okay, I've thought of everything, and then the day of the event comes and it doesn't really work out that way. And as long as you know how to roll with the punches, you'll be okay. So that's what Blanca's project was. It was a lot of me talking about me, but they really put in this work and worked together and talked to these people. And just earlier today, I went to the Foster Senior Club, and there were some folks there from this workshop that we had, and I was able to walk up to them and say, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, and give them big hugs, because we have done that work to get the community actively involved. And thank you for listening to us talk about Shorefront.
I need to remember my name. Hi, I'm Regina Perry Carr. I am honored to serve as the Chief Operating Officer for Movin Legacy. I want to begin by offering sincere thanks to the BMRC, Samaya, and for the Mellon FOCAS Internship Grant. Your vision and support have made it possible for us to expand our Movin Legacy community. I would also like to thank Cheryl, I don't need notes for this, for being absolutely wonderful and like a godsend for real in archiving and working with us. It has been a pleasure, it really has been. So, what is Movin Legacy? While we do produce performance work, our CEO, Jeffrey L. Page, is actually in Japan right now, directing a play. We produce performance work, dance, music, interdisciplinary art. Movin Legacy is first and foremost a research, archiving, and cultural institution. We were founded on the urgent need to protect ancestral knowledge housed in the Black body. Through movement, memory, and ritual, we believe the body is not just an instrument of expression, it is an archive, a living, breathing ledger of resistance, brilliance, and survival. We are not just preserving artifacts, we are protecting a continuum. Dance for us is not aesthetic, and we do dance very, very well. It's not an aesthetic, but it is ancestral. In African and African diasporic traditions, movement is how messages are carried. Dance has always been a vessel of language, law, lineage, and liberation. It is how we mourn, how we praise, how we resist. We chose dance because the body remembers time, the body remembers trauma, and textbooks have tried to erase that. In a world that often excludes embodied knowledge from archives, we insist our movements matter. They are theory, they are record, they are truth. Archiving and Movin Legacy is not a passive act of preservation. It is an act of cultural justice. Through oral histories, digital repositories, and community-based models, we document not only what people have done, but how they've done it, and what it costs to keep them dancing. We are proud to be creating pathways for our communal archiving, intergenerational knowledge, transfer of global diasporic connection, from Philadelphia to Bamako, Mali, from Chicago to Dakar, Senegal, from Oakland, California to Cabo Verde. This is advocacy through memory. This is activism through movement. This is legacy in motion. I'll tell you about a few of our core projects. So the first one, which is what Cheryl worked on, it's a mouthful. It's the GRIO Project, which stands for Genealogical Research in Omni-Atlantic Traditions. And what that project does is it preserves oral histories of dancers and culture bearers, not only here in the US, but abroad also. Jeffrey, our CEO, went on a 4-month expedition. Cheryl will tell you more about that. So I'm not gonna lean in on, I'm not gonna kick your microphone. We also have the repository, which is the digital home for our archive and for all the videos, thousands and thousands of videos, oh my God. The communal archive practice model, developed in partnership with community members, rooted in reciprocity and cultural respect. Not only here in Chicago, but we work with an organization in Ohio, in Cincinnati, Ohio. Are they Cincinnati? Columbus. Columbus. They're in Columbus. We work with people in California. We work with people in Boston, Philadelphia, New Orleans, you name it, Texas. We get to do a lot of fun stuff. We're not just documenting culture, we're holding space for us to thrive. Movin Legacy exists to ensure that rhythm does not stop when the music fades. We're here to protect the fullness of the Black cultural expression, not just today, but for generations to come. So, I personally want you to smile and I want you to feel joy, but I also want you to feel deeply and think deeply about what is lost when we don't get to archive our stories. What's at risk when people try to erase them? We are now living in a time where books are being banned, language is being censored, and culture is fully under attack. So let me be clear. Archiving is not nostalgia for us at Movin Legacy. It is a radical act of resistance. It is how we safeguard our past, protect our present, because if we don't archive our stories, we won't just save history, we save ourselves. So now I will finally close my notes. Once again, it has really been a pleasure working with Cheryl, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Yes. Thank you, Regina. That was lovely. I am Cheryl Muhammad, and I had the amazing opportunity of interning with Movin Legacy. And I want to start by saying dance has had a constant presence in my life. Just learning to express myself through movement. And so when us interns were presented with the opportunity to express our preferences in which community archive that we could be assigned to, I absolutely gravitated toward Movin Legacy. Understanding their mission and preserving the legacy of Black dance, and specifically West African dance traditions, I absolutely wanted to be a part of it. And a project like this is absolutely necessary. And with that, there were, of course, a lot of technical, practical skills involved in this project as far as standardizing and organizing metadata and refining data classification systems and getting super technical. But then there was also the side of it that allowed me to be in the community and immersed in the dance community. And all of it has truly been an amazing experience. And spending so much time with Regina in communities like Bronzeville, the Kenwood area, I had the chance to meet so many visionaries and pioneers within Black dance. And hearing their stories, learning about their experiences, really put into perspective the fact that this initiative goes far beyond Chicago. It's national and it's global. And so I just feel really honored to contribute to the preservation of so many narratives and stories and experiences. Also, I want to say dance is more than just movement. It is storytelling, it is resilience, and it is celebration. So touching on more of the technical side of things, when I started the internship, I was tasked with the responsibility of organizing this vast amount of data that consisted of artist information, dance companies, drummers, conferences. There was just so much foundational information to pull from. And I said, wow, like this, and all of this information has been compiled through Jeffrey and Regina's time as dancers, as educators, being within the community is how they were able to compile this large database in the first place. And it really sparked my interest so much to the point that I thought, how deep does all of this go? And I wanted to see what I could find about the foundation of West African dance in Alabama, which is where my people are from. And I did find one dance company. It's called Natifa African Dance Company. And that was just so intriguing to me because growing up, being a part of that community, I never really associated West African dance tradition with Alabama. And so from there, it was like, okay, obviously the roots run deep all over the place. And so from there, we started to pick up the pace with organizing around conducting oral history interviews. And I was a bit nervous with reaching out to so many of our contacts directly because I know that Regina, you know, these are her people. And so nobody knew who I was. So I was like, oh my goodness, I don't want to do this. But, you know, with making those connections and building that rapport, with that came confidence, and I was eager to get out and meet these people and, you know, start getting the work done. So that was great. And we also had the chance to connect with Newberry and the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago, which it gave us access to more archival resources, helped us with our documentation practices. So that was great. And touching more on the oral history portion of things, we kept a running list of so many artists that we wanted to touch base with. And I think at this point, we've spoken to at least 10 people. I want to say between 10 and 15, and we have a much larger list to go. Because I plan on sticking around if Regina will let me. But
Of course.
And I had already had some information regarding West African dance companies here in Chicago, like Red Clay, Deeply Rooted, and I also knew of Mad Rhythms. But being a part of this project, I learned more about Muntu Dance Theater, Darlene Blackburn Dance Troupe, Ayodele Drum and Dance, and Najwa Dance Corps. So just expanding my understanding of those traditions, especially as it pertains to Chicago, was very eye-opening. And connecting with these leaders within the artistic community, and understanding their origin stories and what drew them to dance was, it really put things into perspective as far as how rich the culture is here in Chicago. Not that I didn't already know, but it was even more eye-opening. And also these dancers practice ballet, modern, contemporary, tap, but they all lead back to West African dance tradition. Also, I want to point out the fact that it was wonderful seeing Regina in conversation with so many of her peers and her mentors. And it really helped me to understand what it means to have family in the artistic community, because it's about building those connections beyond collaboration. And I don't know how much time I have, so I'll try to keep it brief, but Jeffrey, during his 4-month expedition, okay, 1 minute, oh, that's fine. Okay. Jeffrey, he went to Guinea, Senegal, Mali, the Gambia, Cabo Verde, and there were just hundreds and hundreds of photos and videos and so many narratives that emerged from this voyage that he took. And in listening to these stories and these experiences from people from across the globe, it really helped me to understand that these cultural dance expressions evolve from tradition, but they are all rooted in identity and the collective spirit of community. And the last thing I want to note is that speaking with Regina 3 to 4 times a week over Zoom, FaceTime, it really became a safe space to reflect on our goals, our accomplishments, our gripes, everything of that sort. So thank you for creating that safe space. And I just want to conclude by saying dance is absolutely a vessel for carrying the past, the present, and the future. And I'm very grateful to Regina and Movin Legacy for allowing me to be a part of this experience.
We have, 2 videos to show you an example of what we do, but let's let it roll.
I believe the dance is called Butuku. It's from Cape Verde.
Sorry, but can you say that again?
Butuku.
Butuku.
I think so. I think that's the name for it. It's a Cape Verdean dance.
Okay.
That's a women's dance. And it's like a very vigorous hip movement. And there's women who drum, and they have like the drum that you have between your legs, but it's sort of like you're wiping away or flicking away. So at the drum, and then the dance has to do with sort of like removing vibes, and it was, the way I learned about it was that it was a dance that was practiced by women who were recovering from trauma, from being raped, because like the population of Cape Verde is
A lot of it,
enslaved Africans were brought over there for labor, and that's how the population was made, was by raping a lot of women. And so that's a dance that the women created, I suppose, in order to like rid themselves of this energy and the trauma that their bodies were holding. And so like this very vigorous like waist movement, and then with the flicking away of the bad vibes and everything that's happened. And I do believe that there probably are a lot of dances, or like just even the purpose of dance, a lot of it has to do with as a way of counseling ourselves and healing ourselves from our trauma.
And then the next is like a compilation video that just kind of gives you an overall idea of the Griot project. That's us. We're Movin Legacy. Thank you very much.
I'm Liu. I was introduced earlier. I run our oral history programs here, and it's really excited to just hear all these different projects, right? Like even when we work across different subject areas, I think the core of memory work and of specifically community-based memory work is all the same. We're all, it's care and love for our communities. So I'm just honored to be here amongst y'all. Me being a process wonk, I mostly have like boring slides about process, but this one's fun. Just a little group shot while discussing the wonderful world of transcription. Alyssa and Gabrielle both were with our archive this past school year, and so they're gonna do a little tag team conversation in a minute here. Here's a couple of screen caps of our archive, and you can go to either one of these websites. I could do my own whole spiel about all the things I've learned working on this archive for the past 3.5 years, and I won't, but we've been working on an online archive really for at least 3 years, really longer than that since before I got here. But we kind of have 2 versions now. Anyone who's done web development knows it's very expensive. So we kind of have our back end on Aviary, and Aviary does have its own interface that's kind of the further below image, and then we're still kind of working out some of the tweaks on our archive that is integrated into our website, but it does go through Aviary. Again, won't go too much into that process right now, but I also just wanted to include that top left picture. You know, we're talking about community-based archiving, and so it's really important to us throughout our entire process, from outreach through the interview, through post-production, and then through kind of that follow-up outreach, and finally putting it into the archive, that we are moving from a space of care and from our values, making decisions based on our values. And so before you can get into any of the interviews, you kind of have to read through and agree to these community usage agreements about treating interviews with respect and care for the people whose stories they are, almost all of whom are still alive and with us. And in some ways, when they're not alive, the burden of care actually goes up, not down. This is a tool that we use a lot in our oral history training program called the Beauty Turner Academy. We're starting just in a couple weeks here. It's called the Golden Circle. It's kind of coined by like one of those white dudes doing a TED Talk. But the idea is that in a lot of our society, we communicate from the outside in. We talk about our what, and then we talk about the how, and then sometimes we get to the why. But we actually want to do the reverse. We want to move from our why, move from the outside, from the inside out, move from the why to the how, and then finally to the what. So I just wanted to share kind of the why statement that we made for our archive. This was written in collaboration with some of our oral historians and other community members from the public housing community. You know, we talk a lot about identity and positionality, and I always am very upfront about the fact that I'm actually not from the public housing community, and so that makes the community engagement portion, and really not just engagement, but actually empowering the community and turning over some of that power to the community is really, really important. So all of that is to say, our archive's why is to serve as a source of power, knowledge, and strength in the struggles for housing justice, and you know, public housing is one of many components of that struggle. In terms of the what, this is, again, one of my boring slides about numbers. And I'm going to show you a flow chart in a minute that kind of charts these phases. But the biggest thing I wanted to demonstrate with this slide, right, is that we got this great, beautiful number of 184 like interviews in progress. But you see like a huge backlog in phase 3, which is the post-production. Oral history is one of those fields that like everyone loves the interview part, but that's actually like one of the shortest parts of the actual experience. And doing the post-production, by which we mean creating a transcript, which is a written version of the interview, and a finding aid. That word is common in the archival field. Basically, a finding aid is a multi-layered summary of an interview, and Alyssa and Gabrielle are gonna talk more about that later, but doing all that post-production is really where the bottleneck happens for a lot of archives, and so that is where our interns kind of focus their time, and then lastly, just to give you kind of an overview of our process, like I said, that phase 1, not even the outreach, usually just the interview is the poster child for oral history, but you know, it can take months, like plural months, to actually get a hold of the people that you want to interview. You do the interview, you make sure you upload it to multiple locations for file safety. You do that finding aid and the transcript. Airtable is a database that we use. We then do another phase of outreach with the narrators. So we always kind of look at the interview materials with them before we make them public anywhere, and allow them to, you know, make edits to the transcript, to the finding aid, or maybe even make removals. And that's also something that our interns will talk about soon. We do one final quality check, and this is, you know, important for us because we are, you know how people talk about like teaching hospitals? We're not a teaching hospital, but we are a teaching archive, and so everyone is learning as they go, and so we, you know, want to make sure that we are taking a few different passes at the interview materials, for everyone's sake. It's for the narrator's sake. It's also for the oral historian's sake, so they can actually learn and become better and better at what they're learning. And then finally, we accession it, which means it's officially kind of in the archive. We have a few different parts of our archive with different access levels. Someone, I think the Shorefront team earlier was kind of talking about, the power of refusal of community-based archives, that some information is not for everyone. Some information, actually, we want it to stay within the community. And so we give narrators the ability to really customize how the public interacts with their materials. So that's kind of the setup for the intern team. I'm gonna turn it over to them.
My name is Gabrielle Banks, and I'm here with Alyssa Brown, and we just wanted to chat a little bit about our internship experience here. I can start off by saying a little bit about myself and how I kind of approached this project. I'm from the south side of Chicago, and I'm not a public housing resident, but I come from public housing residents. So my grandparents migrated from Mississippi in the second half of the 1930s, and they moved into the Ida B. Wells housing projects when they opened. So that's where they raised all my aunts and uncles. So as I approached this new oral history work, it was kind of big and scary and what is going on? What is the transcript? But it was nice to, in these interviews, in these narrators' voices, hear things that were familiar and kind of grounded me in sentiments and stories and struggles I remember hearing from my family growing up. So that was very reassuring and comforting amidst learning brand new skills. How would you say your approach was, Alyssa? And did you ever get a familiar feeling while you've been doing this work?
Yes. Can you hear me? Okay. Should I use this?
This is for the amplification.
Oh.
That's for the videographer.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yes. Starting off with a little bit about me. I am Alyssa. I am from St. Louis, and I come from a low-income, working-class family. I am not from public housing, and none of my family members have ever lived in public housing. But I am familiar with assistance in other ways, specifically SNAP. I don't have any of that direct relation to public housing, but I did move around a lot also. So on kind of a different end, I think an instability of not having secure housing all the time. I learned a lot about public housing through this. And I do also feel kind of a familiarity with the narrators. One of the narrators whose transcript I created reminded me a lot of my dad, actually. I'm also really passionate about, generally empowering people who have been misrepresented and preserving their stories. So being part of this entire internship and being with the National Public Housing Museum specifically has been really meaningful work to me. A big part of oral history, and I also have been interested in oral history for a really long time, since college, which I guess it's not that long ago, but long enough ago. And something that is a big part of oral history is centering the narrator, because they are the experts of their own story and their own lives. So giving them that space to tell their story without judgment is a big part of it. A conflict that I came across, though, in transcribing one of the interviews was I was trying to keep that in mind and centering that narrator's experience and taking what they're saying at face value, but also trying to care for myself while doing that work and coming across what felt like challenging material to me. So a specific example is when a narrator stated feelings about queer people, negative feelings about queer people, and specifically saying that was a cause for a decline in the Black population, which felt personal to me as a queer person. And this person also said challenging things about other demographics of people that I don't identify with necessarily, but did also feel harmful, and also shared a little bit of misinformation about COVID-19 and 5G. So I was, I wanted to take what this person was saying because this is their experience, but also care for my own self while doing the work. So basically I was just taking breaks when I came across hard topics. But we also we had a conversation, the three of us, about content warnings in the finding aid for that specific transcript. And, but also Gabrielle brought up a good point, which was that adding a content warning can also sometimes feel like labeling the interview or the narrator as bad or challenging or you know, placing judgment on them. So I think approaching that with care and, you know, it's complex. And then the last thing was this narrator was actually deceased. So Leo mentioned it's really important to take good care of the deceased person's materials, but and also this person didn't have any next of kin. Ultimately, we decided not to make the interview and the transcript public, but yeah, it was just complex and complicated, but also it still also important to work on.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were transcribing some interviews. How do we transcribe them?
You know, good old Otter. Shout out to that AI. So oral history, super new. Otter was also super new. We used some of these. I think Otter was our main platform. And it's an AI-supported tool. You can upload an audio file and it transcribes it for you. Not incredibly accurate all the time. And I think we bumped into like different little glitches that were sometimes devastating and sometimes just a little annoying. So it would range from maybe difficulty recognizing a speaker, which I have an example of in our slideshow. And this narrator very obviously says their name, but it doesn't catch them saying their name. So little things like that, or if folks are speaking in a comfortable like dialect, if they're speaking African-American vernacular English and not like the King's English, if they're talking too fast, if they have what I think is a Chicago accent and it's like particularly thick, Otter is not incredibly like advanced to tackle all those things. But it does have like some really awesome features that made this a lot less daunting. It's advanced in the way that as it's playing the audio, it highlights the words for you. And you can like literally follow along bit by bit, like with that assistance. If you click a word, it'll jump right back to that. So you're not scrubbing through an hour of audio to find something. You can adjust the speed with ease.
Slow it down.
Slow it down, because sometimes you really just gotta slow it down. I also dibbled and dabbled with InkScribe after a very devastating moment where I was getting good and deep in my transcript for one of my interviews. And it's like a web-based application, and it's like constantly saving to a cloud. But if it doesn't back up, you might lose everything. So I had one of those lose everything moments, and I was like, ah! So I got a chance to try InkScribe, and it's a lot more straightforward. No AI in InkScribe, so you will be every last word. But I think what I found is that the combination of starting with that AI support to get like a decent draft of your transcript and then moving into like a U-powered tool. Because InkScribe had a lot of great shortcuts that were helpful for formatting when we're like making it gorgeous so that it can go online for people to look at. So I found that the combination was like the best. Like no one tool was perfect. And I think also as we're like in this AI boom, it's hard to know what's working behind the scenes. So I'm like, why did that just happen? I don't know. What's gonna happen next? I don't know. So it's like that big question mark of it. But what about you? How was your transcription tool experience?
It was pretty similar to yours. I only used Otter. I did not dibble and dabble with the other two. But I did have moments where the audio and the actual words would unsync sometimes, and that would be frustrating. And I would have to just like wait for a little bit and come back to it later, which was not always ideal. But ultimately, it is helpful to have that first output, especially because it takes a lot of time to listen and transcribe.
Yeah.
So using that was helpful. I did notice the same things as you, the racial bias in AI for sure, them not picking up everything that people were saying, or just putting out
It's so creative.
Yeah, completely.
It's so creative.
What do they call those? Hallucinations.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the same experience pretty much. I will say, if someone wants to do their own personal transcription work, I would probably recommend Otter. It does cost though, so there's that. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So in addition to creating transcripts, we also made finding aids,
Sure did.
as Liu alluded to, which I actually found were unique here because they are made for each interview, whereas normally finding aids are made for each collection, one for each. So, but I think to make these interviews more discoverable, since there are so many, having a user seeing what each of them is about is probably more helpful. So yeah, anyways, as part of those interviews, we usually tag some themes and keywords to help make the item more discoverable. So you can see this is one that I did for JR's, JR Fleming's, and there are some content warnings, but we're focusing here on the themes and keywords. And so Gabrielle, which keywords would you tag for your experience?
What
with this
keywords?
internship?
Okay, I would first and foremost tag community, definitely. As far as like the transcript experience, I might say something like accuracy versus interpretation and meaning, because it's like I kind of felt like those were two different things. It's like I'm hearing this person say this and these words say this, but I feel like they might have meant this. Another tag I would add, archival backlog processing, big one. Yeah, what about you? Do you have any tags?
Yeah, I was thinking ethics in oral history because that came up a little bit. Power in personal stories.
Yeah.
And also giving grace.
I want to add one more.
Yeah.
Thank you, Liu. With that, I think there's nothing more we would love than to turn the mic over to some of our narrators. These are from two different interviews, but both of the clips really, I think, illustrate how important it is, how important like a collective commitment and investment is gonna be for like sustaining livable public housing.
It was community to me because everybody looked out for each other. And you can always walk down the street and come up. And what I mean by come up, you have enough money to get what it is, whatever you need, you're going to have it because somebody going to give you $1 or something along the way. It was like we struggled together. You know, it was like, I would say basically a forgotten city. You know?
Public housing, right? Be the only safety system for shelter for future generations to come. Let public housing be the only safety system for future generations to have access to shelter, right? Let it reflect that. Let public housing reflect a human right to housing. Because if we don't, then we ensuring that for future generations, there won't be no housing for nobody, right? So, again, when it comes to public housing, let it be the protection for future generations to come, as it has been for our generation and the generations before us. So when you hear people talk about divesting in public housing, not investing in public housing, ask yourself, if another pandemic happened, economic or disease, right? If another pandemic happened, you was to lose your job, who has the responsibility to house you and your family? if there is no public housing. So let public housing be the last system of protection for future generations to come.
We will close with some words from the chair of the board of directors of the BMRC, Stephen.
Thank you. I'm heartened to see such a broad array of people here united in our common curiosity about Black life. And right now, I'm thinking about the work we do in the BMRC, and I'm thinking about those we serve. I'm thinking about legacy holders who are curious about whether or not, I'm thinking about legacy holders, community members who may have things in their basement, and they may be genuinely curious about who would care for that legacy, whether it's a singer, or someone who lived in public housing. Who would be curious about the things that they have? And think about an archivist who's curious about how to make a legacy accessible. I think about an old glam, does everybody know that term? Galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. An old glam institution trying to figure out how to shift its legacy, right? They may be genuinely curious about how to do that. When I think about Black studies researchers who are trying to figure out where in the world could I find information on X topic related to Black life? When I think about a career changer, we got any career changers in here, right? Yes. Who's trying to figure out how could my dream would be to help preserve Black legacies. I'm thinking about archival institutions who are looking for partners with whom they can apply for a grant, right? I'm thinking about a historian with no clue at all where to find information about a topic that they believe to be forgotten, but they are curious. I'm thinking about library and archives master's students who want to learn how to master the art of their practice while honoring Black legacies. I'm thinking about those in general who are interested in legacy preservation but don't know where they might fit in. I'm thinking about concerned citizens who are appalled by archives that might disappear, right? I'm thinking about professors who are teaching archiving. Do we have any here? Right. I'm thinking about all of those in the BMRC community who are genuinely curious about Black life, and I'm genuinely curious about how we can continue to come together to build the capacity of interns, to spark initiatives, and to make an impact that's far beyond the obvious here in the Chicago region, and inspire work like this around the world. We in the BMRC have gotten interest from lots of other places, like, do you have a way for us to build our own BMRC? And we've advised a couple of folks. I remember some folks in Cleveland and some other places. But if you are on this list, or if you're curious about something adjacent to this list, we invite you to contribute to the BMRC, to donate to the BMRC, right? To donate your time, effort, and energy, and by all means, donate your curiosity. Go to our member institutions. Donate your curiosity. Go to member institutions, see what they're doing. Let them know that you are genuinely curious about Black life. And we want BMRC to be a uniting force in the city, and we want that unity to, serve the community. And so we just thank you for coming together today. And I'd like to do a quick gratitude exercise. And it will sound like chaos, but it will be a beautiful kind of chaos. I'm gonna, when I raise my hand like this, I want you to say the name of a person who you saw do hard work for this initiative, who contributed to your life somehow. They may be in this room, they may not be, they may be associated with this somehow. And just yell their name out loud. They may hear you, they may not hear you, but in sync, we will yell their names when I raise their hands. All right, we're gonna do a practice round. Sumaya, right? All right, you gotta join me. All right. All right, so you gotta think of your names. Who made you better? Who made you better through this initiative? Who were you inspired by through this initiative? Who spoke today and you're thinking, wow, I'm really curious about this now? All right? Everybody got a name? We'll start with one. Everybody got a name? All right. Sumaya. All right. All right, another one. Laurice. All right. All right, another. Tolu. All right, one more. I'm gonna give you all time to think. One more. We'll close with. All right, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for participating in that strange exercise, and thank you. I express my gratitude to all of you, and thanks for coming out.